Billionaire's son failed every test, until the new black maid taught him one Adrian. Moreau was a boy who had everything. His father was a billionaire, the owner of a chain of luxury hotels, and his mother came from old aristocratic wealth. Their mansion stretched across rolling hills, guarded by iron gates taller than most city buildings. Inside were marble floors, crystal chandeliers, and halls so wide that Adrian often joked he could get lost in his own house. But the truth was, Adrian was already lost. At 17, he had failed every test that life or school had thrown at him. He wasn't stupid, but he had grown arrogant. His teachers complained of his lack of focus. His tutors resigned after a few weeks, calling him unteachable. He sneered at effort, because why should he try? Everything was already handed to him, and perhaps the most dangerous part was this. Adrian had inherited not just his father's money, but his father's disdain. He looked at those who served him as shadows, unseen, unheard, unworthy. That all began to change the day a new maid arrived. Her name was Evelyn. She was in her late 30s, with skin the color of polished mahogany and eyes that carried storms within them. She wasn't like the other staff, who bowed their heads and whispered apologies, even when Adrian mocked them. Evelyn's gaze was steady. Too steady, Adrian thought. The first day she walked into the mansion, Adrian muttered under his breath, "Great, another one." Evelyn looked at him, and instead of shrinking, she asked, "Another what?" Adrian smirked. "Another maid who doesn't know her place." Evelyn didn't flinch. She simply said, "Sometimes, young man, knowing your place means knowing your worth. You'll learn that one day." Adrian rolled his eyes, but something about her words lingered, like a splinter in his mind. The failed test school grew worse. Adrian's father hired a prestigious tutor from Paris, but Adrian refused to study. During exams, he doodled across the papers or left them blank. "What's the point?" he would say. "My father owns half the city. I'll never need grades." One evening, after Adrian had stormed out of yet another study session, Evelyn found him sulking by the pool. "You look proud of failing," she said quietly, folding laundry nearby. Adrian scoffed. "I don't care. I'll inherit billions. Nobody's going to ask me about algebra when I own skyscrapers." Evelyn paused, then asked, "And what will you do when your billions cannot solve what life throws at you? What if one day you face a test that money cannot buy?" Adrian frowned. "Like what?" She looked at him, her eyes dark and searching. "Like the test of being a man who sees others as human." For the first time in years, Adrian didn't have a comeback. The lesson begins weeks past. Evelyn never lectured him, never forced wisdom upon him, but she had a way of teaching through her presence. One rainy afternoon, Adrian watched her carrying a heavy bucket across the marble floor. Something inside him stirred. He wasn't sure why, and he asked, "Why don't you ask the butler to do that?" She smiled faintly. "Because work is not shame. Work is dignity." That night, Adrian couldn't sleep. Those words kept echoing. Work is dignity. The next morning, he tried for the first time in his life to study. He failed miserably, but Evelyn noticed. She left a folded note on his desk later. Failing after trying is different from failing because you never tried. One teaches you nothing. The other teaches you everything. Adrian stared at that note until his chest tightened. The test beyond books. One evening, a small crisis erupted. Adrian's father had invited foreign investors for dinner. The kitchen was chaotic. Chefs shouted, waiters rushed, silverware clattered. In the middle of the commotion, a tray slipped from a servant's hand and crashed to the floor. The dining hall froze. The servant, a young black man not much older than Adrian, stood trembling. Adrian's father's face burned with rage. "Useless!" he barked. "Do you know how much that crystal costs? You'll pay for it out of your wages, every cent." The investors murmured uncomfortably. The young servant's eyes filled with tears. Adrian looked around. Nobody defended him. Not the butler, not the chefs. And then he saw Evelyn, standing silently in the corner, her gaze fixed not on the servant, but on him. Her eyes were asking him a question. Adrian's heart pounded. He knew this was it. The test she had spoken of. A test money couldn't buy. He stood up, his voice shaking but loud enough to echo across the hall. "Father, it was an accident. Don't punish him for being human." The room went silent. His father's face darkened. "Adrian, sit down." But Adrian didn't. If crystal matters more than people in this house, then maybe this house is failing the real test. Evelyn's lips curved into the faintest smile. Transformation. That night, Adrian lay awake again, but this time it wasn't shame keeping him up. It was awakening. The next week saw a change in him. He studied harder, surprising his tutors. He began asking Evelyn questions, not about cleaning, but about life. She told him stories of her childhood in the South, where she had been told as a girl that she would never rise above scrubbing floors. Yet here she was, teaching the son of a billionaire lessons no textbook could hold. "Adrian," she said once, "the world has two kinds of wealth, the wealth of possessions and the wealth of compassion. Only one survives when the other is gone." He wrote that down in his notebook. By the time his final exams arrived, Adrian still wasn't the smartest student in the room. But he passed, for the first time in years. And when he received his results, he didn't run to show his father. He walked quietly to the servants' quarters and showed Evelyn. Her eyes softened, and she whispered, "Now, you've passed the real test." Years later, Adrian would grow into a man very different from his father. He took over the family business but restructured it, offering scholarships to the children of staff, raising wages, treating every employee as if they were shareholders, of dignity. When asked in interviews what had caused such a radical shift in him, Adrian would always say the same thing. "I once failed every test in life, until a black maid taught me the one test that mattered, seeing humanity in others." And though the world applauded his words, only Adrian knew the full truth. How a woman who society overlooked had reshaped the destiny of a billionaire's son. Lesson racism is not always taught in loud, hateful words. Sometimes it hides in silence, in the way we look past others as though they do not matter. But dignity has no skin color. Wisdom has no class. And sometimes the richest lessons come not from marble halls, but from the hearts of those the world refuses to see.